Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Courtroom Insider. It is February 11th, 2026, and tonight, a serious topic with victims who want their voices heard, who had planned to address the man they say sexually abused them when they were in the foster care program, but they never got a chance because he died before going to trial. This is a story that's been in the works for decades here in Idaho. I've been working on it for about the past month or so, speaking with a couple of the victims and the Attorney General's office and the attorney, the prosecutor who was working to get this case to trial. You will hear from all of them tonight, all of the people that I've been speaking with. It is a story that, to be honest, I really hadn't heard much about until a year ago, when I got an email from one of you asking if I planned to cover the trial of Dr. Richard Pines in January of this year in Boise. I did some research and I learned that Dr. Pines had been charged with lewd and lascivious conduct for crimes that were allegedly committed decades ago. I had planned to go to Boise and cover this trial and bring you the news from it, especially because it involved a highly influential doctor in Boise, and that knowing that there would be victims that would want to share their stories. But then about 2 months ago, less than 2 months ago, I got a news release that Dr. Pines had died at age 66. This is the news release. From the Boise County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, Alex Sosa, who, again, you'll hear from in just a moment. On March 16th, 2023, and February 7th, 2024, Richard Pines was indicted and accused by 2 Boise County grand juries for 5 counts of lewd and lascivious conduct under Idaho Code 18-1508. The acts were alleged to occur in Boise County between 2001 and 2008, where he had manual genital and or oral genital contact with 5 underaged foster boys. Then, on December 24th, 2025, the defendant Richard Pines died. While Pines held the presumption of innocence under Idaho's and the United States Constitution, a lengthy investigation produced evidence that Richard Pines, a psychiatrist for the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, that these acts had a significant and uncalculable impact on these victims' lives. The jury trial in this matter was set to begin on January 6, 2026, I think is what they meant to say. Excuse me. We extend our deepest appreciation to those victims whose courage had been central to this case. Coming forward, working closely with investigators and sharing their experiences in court requires tremendous strength and vulnerability. Their voice protects others and strengthens our entire community. We honor the bravery these victims have shown throughout the investigation and judicial process. Their resilience inspires us, and we remain committed to providing compassionate, victim-centered support to every survivor who placed their trust in us. And then the Boise County Attorney's Office goes on to thank those who assisted with the case. So, some background before we get to it. Richard Pines, in the 90s, early 2000s, was a well-respected psychiatrist who worked in Boise in Ada County, and he was the psychiatrist who treated foster children for the Department of Health and Welfare. He offered and volunteered to take some of these foster children, always boys, on respite care. So if I'm a foster parent and I need a weekend away without the child, or a week away in the summer or whatever, the doctor would offer to take care of these boys. He often took them to his cabin where these boys say they were molested. Some say that the abuse happened in his office. And they continued to see these. Now, these are the most vulnerable of the vulnerable children. They're already in the foster care program. Many of them go between house to house to house. One of them told me that he stayed in 260 foster homes over the course of his childhood. So you take a child like that, sexually abuse them, allegedly, and then they're left with it. Many of these young boys went on to commit crimes in their own lives when they were adults. Many of them wanted to put this all behind them and not deal with it again. Dr. Pines ended up, in 2013, being called before the Idaho Board of Medicine on accusations that he had uh, sexually had sexual inappropriate contact with 4 patients. They ripped away his license, said he could no longer practice. He appealed all the way to the Supreme Court. Important to note, this is a medical kind of civil issue, not a criminal issue. He was never charged in 2013. Goes to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court rules in 2015 that because 2 of the patients were not his patients, only 2 of them were, the other 2 were not, the medical board technically doesn't have the authorization to pull away a license if it wasn't a patient-doctor relationship. 2 of them still were patients, but the other 2 were not. Dr. Pines also had foster children of his own. So the Supreme Court sends the case back to the Board of Medicine to redo this thing, retry it. The Board of Medicine ends up saying, okay, we're going to, you can get your license back after you go through an intensive rehab program, but you can't work with minors. 2 years later, he gets his license back after going through the rehab program. And the board says, okay, you can't work with minors until 5 years from now. You can appeal, and in 5 years, if you want to work with kids again, you can, maybe, we'll consider it at the time. And if that is granted, then an adult supervisor has to be in there if you do work with kids. 5 years to the day, he appeals, he gets the authorization to start working with kids again, as long as there's an adult present. I'm summarizing thousands of pages of court documents, by the way, into 2 minutes. It's all online. You can go see it. Once that happens, well, over the years, some of these boys who are now men started to come forward and started to say, hey, and started to talk with each other. The Boise County Attorney, Alex Sosa, got enough evidence to hold a grand jury, 2 grand juries, and that's when Dr. Pines was arrested in 2022 or 23. And he bailed out. And they ended up, they found what happened was, you'll hear in a moment, this many years later, really hard to put together a case and find, 1, people who want to talk, 2, credible, not credible stories, I shouldn't say it, but the strongest cases that a jury will believe. Our memories are fickle. You try to remember back to something when you were 8, 7. That's hard. Granted, in such a, emotional state, such a not only emotional, but life-changing sexual abuse, you might remember every single detail. But they had to make sure they had strong cases, and they apparently did, because he was indicted by grand juries. The trial was set for January, and Dr. Pines dies in September. So that's the background. Here's who you're going to hear from tonight. The prosecutor, Alex Sosa. You're going to hear from Aleshea Boals. She's the victim coordinator for the Idaho Attorney General's office, who got involved in the case. It's her job to work with the victims, contact the victims, and get the victims involved. You'll hear from her. You'll hear from 2 of the victims. One, his name is Tom Croft. It is heart-wrenching to hear him tell his story. But he's doing it in hopes of reaching you, many of you out there that might need help. And then you're going to hear from another victim. We're just calling him Shawn. He doesn't want his last name used. He didn't want to go on camera, but he did authorize. I did record the phone call. I'll play that for you as well. I hope that there's much that can be gleaned from the conversation tonight, and I hope this never happens again. Starting off, here is prosecutor Boise County, Alex Sosa. For people that haven't heard of this case, can you just kind of give us the basic background about it?
Yes. And so this case involved a Richard Pines. He was a child psychologist. He was essentially, that's kind of all he wanted to do, it sounds like. And so he worked through the process, was in a couple of different states, and then eventually came to Idaho in the kind of mid-90s. During that time, he continued to his expertise, training, and things like that. Then eventually got involved with the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare. At that point, he was unmarried, didn't have any children of his own, and seemed to have taken an interest in children in foster care and in the system. And eventually, he really started working more directly with the Department of Health and Welfare to the point that he was the head psychiatrist or psychologist, excuse me, for the Department of Health and Welfare. At that time, the Department of Health and Welfare did not keep very good records. And so it sounded like whenever there's a child who's in the foster care system or is in the custody of the Department of Health and Welfare, essentially there's times that the children just kind of are a little bit too much for a foster parent to have. And so whenever there's a break period, it's called respite care. And this goes back to not having a lot of records. And so whenever a child goes into respite care for a weekend, for 24 hours, for a week, something like that, the department didn't really seem like they had a solid program for that. And so Richard Pines appears to have offered to allow children to come into his stay. Being a medical doctor, he just made a lot of money. And so he had a lot of resources and was able to kind of give off that he was this kind of fun person who was able to help out. And so when children initially came, they saw this giant house, whether that was in Ada County in Boise City or his second home in Garden Valley, Boise County. And whenever the children would go there, there wouldn't be any supervision, wouldn't be any check-ins. It would just be really him one-on-one with children. And then at some point, and it seemed like it may have been pretty early on, he started doing kind of unspeakable acts to these children. What we kind of saw through the process was his MO was under the guise of needing further medical certification. And so he would essentially start, offering to give massages. And it would always come after spending time in a hot tub or something like that. And then essentially offering that they don't need to wear clothes around him and things like that. And after the actual hot tub, then he would, have them come out and maybe they dry off a little bit, but then he would perform a massage on them. And there would be some incidental grazing, a part of that massage. And that was grazing on these victims' genitalia. But that didn't just happen once. In Boise County, we have, kind of solid evidence of it happening at least 6 times. However, in our investigation, which was with the Boise City Special Victims Unit, it also sounded like that had occurred in Boise City as well. And so with all of that, it all just kind of, nothing seemed right in the situation. Mm-hmm. And so throughout that whole process, years went by that was occurring. The department was never really in the loop on anything that happened. But then disclosures started coming out. When those disclosures started coming out, they really started mounting. And I know at some point he went through a disciplinary process with his medical license, and that went up to the Idaho Supreme Court. And in testimony and in words that he gave himself, it certainly sounded like that he did have contact, but he really made admissions to having contact with these previous children whenever they turned above the age of 18. And contact that he admitted to was sexual in nature. It was always male boys. Mm. And so after that point, it looks like he was kind of suspended or had specific terms of his disciplinary action, that he couldn't be practicing on children without other supervision as well, without somebody else knowing. And so years went by after that, and then eventually My predecessor, Adam Strong, who was the prosecuting attorney at the time, who's now a judge in Power County, he started taking an interest in the case, and when evidence was presented to him of, hey, these acts happen in Boise County. And so I think it shows a great amount of fortitude to be able to sit back and say, hey, this is a large case, but things like that can't happen in Boise County. And so he eventually went through the grand jury process with 3 victims, and the grand jury indicted on all 3 counts for those 3 particular victims in Boise County. And then after that, more victims came forward, specifically for Boise County itself. And so we eventually went through a second round of grand jury and secured 3 additional victim indictments in that case. Kind of after that, we were really proceeding to trial. Me, in recognizing that this was such a large case, requested the help of the Attorney General's office, and they were more than willing to assist me and have a special Deputy Attorney General assigned to the case, a victim witness coordinator, and really kind of the resources of the Attorney General's office to help us prosecute this case. And so we were going through motion practice. I think we've ended up filing just, a half a dozen motions, maybe, more than that, really. Each motion being, 10 pages of just facts and, hey, here's exactly what happened and here's how the case should be presented to a jury. However, Mr. Pines essentially passed away in the fall of 2025, and we were not able to proceed on that.
So, Alex, do you know how many? I know you indicted on 6, but it sounds like there could be more victims out there. Any idea
Yes.
how many total?
We don't have an idea. At least from my perspective, in trying to sift through the amount of evidence that Boise SVU uncovered, as well as a detective with the Boise County Sheriff's Office, we saw that there is going to be a large number of victims and people still coming forward. However, because of the lack of record keeping from the Department of Health and Welfare, we just don't have a list of everybody who was involved in respite care, who went to Richard Pines' stay. And so because of that, it's really hard to venture a guess.
Yeah. Do you know the time frame? Like, what years are we talking about before the investigation took place with the Department of Health and Welfare and his license was suspended, and then after?
Yes. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm going to pull up.
Like the 2000s, early 2000s, or late 90s, or
I'd say from the evidence that was presented to me, it appears it was in the very late 90s, proceeding until perhaps 2008, kind of off the top of my head, while I'm trying to pull up my indictments and other information.
No, you're good. So it sounds like things have obviously changed, hopefully, with the Department of Health and Welfare since then, as far as keeping track of records and who's seeing what. He would see these vulnerable children in foster care, invite them over. In fact, one of the victims I spoke to said that he took them to a cabin. I'm assuming that's the cabin in Idaho City.
Yes, up in Garden Valley. Yes.
Garden Valley, yeah. Do you know how the investigation began in the first place? Like, was it somebody that came forward and tipped off the authorities? Like, how did you all become aware of this?
Yes, it was exactly that. I think whenever we're talking about child sex abuse, it's very rare that it's ever seen, very rare that there's ever kind of that type of information that comes out. I mean, even in prosecuting separate cases, there's people who have concerns with an older individual maybe being too familiar with a child, but it's very rare that they ever kind of come forward and independently talk about it. And so just like in this case, I think there was some indication of that, but the initial report came from an actual victim in the case, talking to, Boise SVU, calling it in, just kind of in a non-emergent manner and saying, hey, this is what happened to me. And I think that uh, even in looking at, the vulnerable victims in this case, I think there was further evidence that whenever, the foster care system, because that's right, is designed to make sure that parents are eventually reunified with their children, that there was a reunification, and one of the children was discussing that with a parent. I believe it was a mother, and it was a mother who made a call on that as well.
Hmm. Did Mr. Pines ever confess to this that you're aware of?
He did not confess to anything, to any contact prior to the victim being 18, sort of thing.
So he said any sort of sexual activity that I had with any of these men or boys occurred after they were 18.
Yes.
And did he die in custody? Like, was he in jail or had he been out on bond?
No, he had been out on bond.
And was it like natural causes or
Yeah, it was.
what did you think when you found out that he had passed?
It is something I still think about because um, this is a really deep case because of the victims that were involved, because they're victims that, the state was supposed to take care of. One of the victims in the case uh, was taken in a child protection action that was filed in Boise County. And so that was Boise County saying, hey, this is a bad situation, and we're going to step in and file on a child protection case. And then that child ends up in foster care, and then these acts happen. And so I think that whenever you're looking at these particular victims, as well as anybody that's gone in the foster care system, they're not set up in life in the way that everybody else is or everybody else should be. And so because of that, they commit their own acts in the future. And so whenever we're talking to victims, a lot of times we're talking to them in custody because they have their own set of charges. And which in my mind, certainly compounds the level of trauma for them, because they were just kids whenever they entered that foster care system. But then these acts happened, and it really, really set them up in a worse manner for the rest of their life, to where they were not able to think properly, and they ended up committing their own crimes, and some of them, extremely serious crimes. And so whenever we're prosecuting a case like this, my co-counsel, Ken Robbins, the very clear theme that came out was, these were just kids. Whenever this happened, these were just kids. And so in looking at that and looking at everything that's happened with them since then, we felt extremely obligated to be able to get a conviction, to be able to have these victims tell their story, and for the victims to know that people within the system truly care about them and truly care about justice. And so whenever we're not able to secure that conviction for them, and we're not able to have them testify in front of a jury so they could tell their story, I mean, I think it certainly gutted me, because then we sit back and say, hey, should we have pushed this to go as fast as we can, knowing that some of our preparation is not going to be completely lined out, and so we can have them, give them that chance, give them that opportunity. And so I think that whenever that wasn't able to happen, we sit back and we hope that they don't think that the system let them down again, didn't let them down again.
Yeah, they expressed similar thoughts to me as well. In fact, they were angry that he died. They wanted to testify and wanted to stare him in the eyes. Some people would probably think it's a good thing he died. Then you don't have to go through the trial, you don't have to go through all that, and it's done. But I think a lot of these guys felt a void not being able to, face him in the courtroom. Not that you can control, death or anything about
Yeah.
that. Um,
Well, and another part of that is, people are certainly owed the presumption of innocence in our system. And I truly think that we have the best system in the world. And so, my ethical responsibilities as a prosecuting attorney is if I file on a case, I have a serious reason to believe that I can gain a conviction. And so I certainly thought that during this case. But just to have the victim's ability to speak about the case. And I think that in and of itself would have given them a large amount of closure.
yeah. Alex, can you talk a little bit about your role as the prosecutor going through decade? This is a decades old case. As you said, it's pretty deep. There's a lot of victims. It involves a state agency. It involves a well-known public figure, this psychologist who people knew, worked with hundreds, thousands of kids over the years. Where do you start? How do you even put together the case, and how do you methodically go through it so that you can bring it to a trial, bring it to a jury, and then get a conviction if that's your goal?
I think we try to start every case kind of in a similar, consistent manner. That we try to take the initial report, whether that's a driving under the influence, a possession charge, or sex case, and we try to look at the underlying report of that. And then we try to, figure out, hey, is there validity to this? How much weight are we going to give certain evidence? How much weight is a jury going to give certain evidence? But especially with victim cases, I want to be sure that that we're trusting them initially in the process, and that we want as a system to trust victims. And if they come forward, we're going to sit back and we're going to say, okay, I hear you. Here's exactly what I'm thinking right now. I need to be able to better corroborate this. I need some additional information to understand the initial allegation, the initial report, and sit and try to kind of build that up. I think in this case that certainly happened with the Boise SVU, that they started that process. And then they said, well, okay, if this happened once, it seems like it could have happened again. And then around that time, an additional report came in, which inherently gives more validity to the first report. And then you start sitting back and saying, okay, there's got to be more evidence to help corroborate or disprove this. Because again, that's the other side of the coin on this. It's, as a prosecuting attorney, we have to look out for, is particularly being a prosecuting attorney, we have an ethical obligation to the defendant, to a suspect, to make sure that their rights aren't being violated. And so we have to almost try to, going through the evidence, not disprove, but lend more validity to it, to say, hey, this is a specific individual that's committing these acts, and we're going to really start targeting and working on building a case in that manner. And so that whole process looked like search warrants, looked like actual, getting into the house, doing forensic downloads of computers, going through books to find anything, documenting the scene as best we can. In a case like this, where the acts happened, almost 20 years ago, it was trying to talk to the current homeowner to say, hey, we need to be able to look at the inside of the house, the outside of the house, even something simple as, okay, was there a hot tub? Was there an easy access to that? And even to the point of matching up pine knots in a wall with an old photo of a victim.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Down to the little tiny details like that can help prove whether someone is, telling the truth. Do you think, looking back now, where were the issues? Where were the problems? I mean, going forward, what safeguards do you think could be in place to help prevent this from happening again?
Documentation. I think that having a clear objective standard of, when a child goes into respite care, foster care, that we know exactly what's happening. Frankly, I think also kind of just debriefing with the child whenever they go into foster care, and having a department worker sitting down and saying, okay, what concerns do you have, sort of thing. And so I do believe that a lot of those things are happening now. I think the health and welfare system that we have in 2026 uh, is a lot of humans who care, who work tireless hours to try to improve the lives of children and to making sure that oversights like this do not happen anymore.
Very good. Is there anything you want to add? Anything we missed?
I, I think that the victims in this case showed an extreme amount of bravery in coming forward, and trying to a system that they inherently didn't trust. Whenever a child protection case is filed, that's because there's sufficient reason that when looking at statutory basis that something was wrong and those children did not need to be in the home. And so I think that children can sit back on that and say, hey, that's the state coming in and taking a child. And then the children could sit back and kind of be bitter about that. And then the children, whenever they become an adult, and certainly being a public defender for as long as I was, there's a lot of people that inherently just distrust the system. They're just not, they don't have a similar upbringing of, hey, the law is there for a reason, and the law is there to bind and protect our society. And so they have a negative view of society and a negative view of law in the first place. And so I think that whenever these victims were going through their lives and things would happen, they would see the law being really levied against them because of acts that they did. But the law not necessarily protecting them for acts that had occurred to them. Mm-hmm. And so I hope that we are still striving in the best manner that we can to do that, to protect everybody equally. I know with the Attorney General's office, I was extremely happy with the work that they put in with Ken Robbins and Aleshea Boals to making sure that we're looking out for everybody equally, trying to seek justice in the best way we can, trying to seek that the law applies to everybody. And in looking at all the just uncalculable hours that went into a case like this, whether that was the Boise County Sheriff's Detective, Max Sprague, the Boise SVU unit, particularly Brandon Joseph, Terry Weir, that was a lot of work that they sat back and said, no, this is significant and we need to make sure that we do the best we can for these victims, sort of thing. And so I'm extremely appreciative of their work.
Is there a statute of limitations in Idaho on these type of crimes?
There is not.
Okay, so that I guess is good for the victims that could go back years and years. Alex, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Big thanks to Mr. Sosa for chatting with me and being willing to take this case and prosecute it, albeit it didn't end how they hoped, but at least he was willing to do it. Next, I want to introduce Aleshea Boals. I actually met her last fall or summer when I went out to the Attorney General's office to do a feature piece on the ICAC unit, the Victims Crime Against Children unit, Internet Crimes Against Children unit. And her job is to work with victims. That's all she does every day. Victims of crimes we might not hear about, victims of high profile crimes. Her job is to let people know there's help available. And so in this particular case with Dr. Pines, she told me there were pages of victims. She had to track them down, find out which ones. Some of them didn't want to talk to her. One, you'll hear her say, vomited the entire time they were speaking because it brought back such horrible, horrible memories, affected them mentally for life. Others were unsure about what to do. And her job was to support them and lend them guidance and help them. Here is Aleshea Boals. Aleshea, why don't we get started by telling people exactly what you do? What is your job?
Okay. I am a victim witness coordinator for the Idaho Attorney General's office. There are victim witness coordinators all around the state of Idaho, and we assist victims throughout the court process. So from the crime scene through the parole board, that whole way, there are victim witness coordinators like me to assist victims.
And when you
through their
say
darkest
assist,
moments.
how
Mhm.
are you assisting? What are you doing for them?
So I'll give you an example. In a crime scene, we may be helping a victim set up crime scene cleanup, calling their bishop to get help, to get a blessing, to help set up a funeral, to set up interviews with the detectives, a variety of things on initial law enforcement type victim witness crisis response. When it comes up to a prosecutor's office, then those victim witness coordinators assist victims with going to court, understanding court, all of the updates on what's happening. We tried really hard not to let the media be the first one to tell our victims what's happening. We try to tell them ahead of time. That doesn't always work in all cases, but I will tell you for the most part, it does. And so we want victims to have a heads up and someone that doesn't wear a gun and a badge, someone that's not a prosecutor, someone that legitimately cares about them to guide them through the court process.
How did you become aware of this particular case with Richard Pines? And as a victim coordinator, where do you even start when there's so many victims?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. For years, I've actually heard about this case for years. About 2.5 years ago, we were contacted by the Boise County prosecutor, Alex Sosa, and he reached out to the Attorney General's office and said, "Hey, will you help us with this case? It's a huge case, and we have all these victims, and it's complicated, and we want to do it right." And so, of course, the Attorney General's office said, yes, we would be more than happy to help. And so they assigned myself and a deputy prosecutor, Ken Robbins, to help. Ken was helping with the prosecution, and I was helping with the victims. There were initially 6 victims, and we eventually had to drop one of those cases. And so then we had it down to 5 victims. But they were all in very different stages of in their lives. They were suspicious of law enforcement. They were mad at the system. So it really took some time to build a relationship with each one of them and understand their story and let them know that we believed them and that we would fight this fight with them.
And when you say there were 6 victims, Aleshea, it's likely there were a lot more, but as far as legally pertaining to this case, there were
Yes.
6 legally on the records.
Yes, there were lots of victims, and what we had to do is find the cases that we could prove. Some victims that were on that list didn't want to be a part of it, and that was their choice, of course. And then the 6 that we did choose, it was traumatic for them to come back after all these years, but they really wanted to fight the fight, and were thrilled that we were finally trying to do something. So yes, there were initially pages of victims, and then we kind of put it down to the cases we could prove.
And these victims are in vulnerable different states, at least when they were children. They're in the foster care system, so they've already had challenges with
Right.
their lives. And then to have this added on top of it, I imagine talking with some of them, it brought back all sorts of emotions.
Yes, absolutely. Some of them were angry, like initially, like very angry, angry words at us, angry. There was one that threw up the whole time. He couldn't stop throwing up. We had to meet in a parking lot because he was throwing up the whole time. It just absolutely brought all these feelings right back to the forefront. Some of them kind of acted out a little bit with their anger. I mean, we had the gamut, and we had to try and get them Idaho Crime Victims Compensation so that they could get into counseling and they could start dealing with some of the demons that had been haunting them.
How does that work? How does the crime victim compensation program work?
So, how Idaho Crime Victims Compensation works, and let me just tell you, it's amazing. We're so lucky in Idaho to have it. So, what we did was we went back, and any victim that we knew of, they did not have to be charged victims. Any victim that we knew of that did not have the opportunity to apply for crime victims compensation, we can go back and apply and do that application. And we write a letter saying that they're cooperating. And by cooperating, it doesn't mean that we're just trying to nail someone. We're just saying they have the courage to come forward and tell their story, and they're willing to go to court with it. So we did that, and we provided the police reports to prove that they were victims of crime and that they had reported this. And crime victims rushed those applications through for us and got them into counselors. So keep in mind, Richard Pines was a counselor. So this is hard to then encourage these victims to go see a counselor because he was a psychiatrist, and there's a lot of fear there. So one of the victims to this day cannot go to the dentist, he can't go to the doctor, and he still has not sought counseling because he's so frightened of counselors. Some of the others have really benefited, and we helped them find counselors that they could trust and really like be nurtured by to get them back to where they were the best they could.
What do you do if people now come forward and say, I was a victim too? Obviously, in this case, the defendant is dead, so you really can't charge him anymore. But are there still resources for them now through the Victims Compensation Fund and through you?
Yes, absolutely. If there is a victim that never had the opportunity to apply for Idaho Crime Victims Compensation, and we can show that somehow they were a victim listed on that list of victims that have already reported years ago, yes, absolutely, we can help them get that going. And I would be happy to.
Right. Good. That's good to hear. When you found out that Mr. Pines had died, was it your job to contact the victims and let them know? And how did that go over?
Well, to be honest, I had a feeling a few weeks before that something wasn't going well. Obviously, he has HIPAA rights. So like we didn't know exactly, but I had a feeling this isn't going to go over well. What if he dies and I just go out of the blue and tell them, oh, sorry, he died. So I did tell them a few weeks ahead of time, he is very sick. And I just want to give you a heads up. So I gave them a heads up a few weeks prior. And then we did call and let them know that he had died. Yeah. And it was a letdown because we had been waiting so long. We had waited over a year to go to trial.
Yeah, your office had, the prosecutor had as well, and these men had been waiting their whole lives for justice. So again, was it the same sort of reaction, anger, frustration for some of them? Were some relieved because he was gone?
I think one was kind of relieved, but the rest was anger and frustration. Yeah, very, very frustrated. They wanted their day in court and they wanted to be able to tell their story. And we wanted that for them as well. Even though we knew it was going to be some rough days, we wanted that for them.
Sometimes it feels like the legal system, the job is to bring justice to the families, justice for the crimes, justice to the community, for all of us. But a lot of victims feel like that doesn't really happen. Even at the end of the day, even with a conviction, they have to relive the crimes they went through. They have to live with this their whole lives. That a lot of times once that guilty verdict comes or the sentencing day comes, they still walk out feeling a void.
Yes.
How do you address concerns that come up like that? I mean, is there any way for them to achieve peace? And I know everybody's different and every situation's different, but I hear it from a lot of people that are like, I still feel empty. I still feel like I'm not complete.
Yeah, no, I have worked in the criminal justice system for almost 30 years, and I've seen cases that we weren't able to prosecute. I've seen cases where we got a not guilty verdict. I've seen cases where we got terrible sentences, and I've seen cases where we got great ones. And what I've learned, and I've seen this one now that he died, but what I've learned through this whole process is when you go through the criminal justice system, the justice doesn't come in the courtroom. It comes like through healing. It comes through you healing, and it may take a long time, but the healing does come if you allow that to kind of start happening, but it may take 20 years. I think for these victims in particular, it has taken them to be believed, for their stories to be understood, and for them to feel protected. I know one of the victims consistently says, thank you so much just for believing me. And he says it all the time to me, and he knows that I believe him. But I think that they are so programmed to be let down by the system. And I think kindness and understanding goes a long way. And Idaho has a great system of all of these people that legitimately care about victims of crime. And while they may never, ever be 100% whole, I think we can help them feel heard and at least get some form of justice in their heart.
Very good. Is there anything that you want to add, Aleshea?
I think the thing that I would add is that it is a privilege to assist crime victims, and it's certainly a privilege to help the Pines victims. They deserve their voices to be heard, whether it's now or whether it was 20 years ago. They deserve that. And so it has been a privilege to help them. And I hope that Boise County and Boise Police Department that work this investigation and the Idaho Attorney General's office, that we continue to do good work for the citizens of Idaho, because they believe it. We legitimately believe in these victims and in the cases we're prosecuting.
Well, thank you for your work, and thank you for giving hope and helping these victims through the process. It can be long and daunting and frankly frustrating for a lot of them, I know. So glad.
Thank you for your good work. Thank you for
Well,
your good work. We appreciate you telling these victims' stories. Like legitimately, we do. They deserve it. I think sometimes the bad guys get all the press.
You can tell that Aleshea just has the type of personality that is so warm. And if I was a victim, she'd be the type of person you'd want to deal with, because she's going to help you. She cares. You can tell she cares. Thanks to Aleshea for chatting with me and connecting me with the next two people who you will hear from. I want to go to my interview that I did with a man named Shawn, who did not want to go on camera, but was willing to share his story. He spoke with me over the phone, and he was one of Dr. Pines' victims when he was a kid. He had been sexually abused in the foster care program before meeting Dr. Pines. He just assumed that's what adults do. And so when Dr. Pines did the alleged activities to him, he assumed that it was normal. And it wasn't until years later that he realized that this was not okay. And he was ready to testify. In his words, he says he was pissed off when he found out Dr. Pines died. Here's Shawn. All right, Shawn, why don't we just start from how you met Mr. Pines, and when was that?
I met Richard Pines back when I was in foster care, probably around, I would say 2001 or around 2004 to 2001, something like that. So when my foster parents went out of town, I would go over to I'll go over to his house while my foster parents were out of town.
Okay. Did he live near your foster parents, or did they know him professionally?
He didn't live too far. He lived up on top of the mountain. So I mean, probably like 20 minutes away, something like that.
And what part of Idaho was this in?
It was in Boise.
In Boise. So you were how old at the time?
I would say like 9-ish, 10-ish.
Okay. Did you have siblings?
No siblings with me. No.
So they would send you there to basically have him babysit while they went out of town?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And what was he like as a person before you knew anything about him or before he abused you?
Well, he was nice. I mean, he's a nice guy. I mean, freaking the guy he was rich. I mean, he had all these fancy things. Freaking, like I said, he lived up on the freaking above Boise. I mean, he had a cabin up in the woods up in Idaho City. Freaking, he had three kids, two teenagers that were in high school, and then the younger kid that was my age that I got to hang out with when I was there. I mean, like I said, he was a nice guy and everything, but yeah.
So I'm assuming your parents or your foster parents trusted him. You did as well, given that he had money, he had a nice job, he had kids of his own.
Yeah.
And you can get as personal as you want. You don't have to answer anything. Just, I mean, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. Do you remember when things took a turn?
All right, the first day.
Really?
Yeah, it was late. Yeah, the very first day. Yeah.
That quick?
It was quick. Yeah, I mean, he wasted no time. No.
Were you there by yourself, or were his kids around, or?
No. Well, his kids were there at the house, but he separated me from the other kids. Yeah.
And can you say what he did?
Yeah, I mean, for the first time was he took me up to his room, and he had this jacuzzi, whatever, as a bathtub. And he like told me that he was like a psychiatrist or something like that. Like he pretty much had me get naked and freaking massage my legs, my thighs, freaking ask me all these questions and whatnot, and ask me if I was comfortable, la da 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 da, and stuff like that.
Mm. Did you realize that this wasn't right as a young kid, or did you just think, oh, this is, he's a professional, I should just trust him?
Well, so like before I was even in foster care, I was molested before I was even in foster care. So uh, I already knew these kind of signs, and I was already kind of groomed beforehand to kind of like to to believe this kind of thing was normal.
Mm.
So uh, in my mind, this was just a normal thing. I mean, this is what grown-ups did, freaky. So there was in my mind there was no reason to no red flag. I mean, there was no real red flags popping up in my mind.
Right. So, how many times did he abuse you
Probably like 6 or 7 times.
over the course of years, like 1 year?
Probably I probably okay. So I went over. Okay, so I went over to his place probably 6 to 7 times. The abuse probably happened like I would say like 5 times, probably something like that.
But almost every time you went over, he was doing it.
Oh yeah, every time I went over there, because every time I went over, I would stay for like a week to 2 weeks at a time.
Oh, okay. Did you ever say anything to your parents
No, no,
or to anybody?
no. No, I didn't say honest. Yeah, I didn't say anything to anybody. No.
Is that because you thought it was normal, or you were ashamed, or you just, do you know why, looking back?
I for one, I thought it was normal, and for two, he told me that he was a trained professional, and that he was this was for his practice.
Mm, right.
Right. He was doing this for his practice, and to get like I want to say for to get his hours, or I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was on the lines of this is what he does for a living.
I see. Okay.
Right.
So what ended up happening? I mean, that was when you were 9 or 10. Did you keep in touch with them? I mean, did you end up moving to a different foster home?
No, like it's I just after a while, I just my grandparents adopted me, and I moved down to Utah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you moved to Utah, and then how many years passed? Was it when you heard that he'd been arrested that you said, "Oh, oh my gosh, that happened to me," or what played out?
So what happened was I was incarcerated, and I was doing a writer up at Cottonwood when back in 2019, and I was doing a writer, and then a the not the warden, I can't remember who it was. They came and approached me and told me that some detectives wanted to talk to me. I was like, oh shit, I thought they were like trying to bring more charges upon me or something.
Right.
So they brought me in this room, and they're like, oh, they introduced themselves, and they're like, well, we want to talk to you. Do you know a guy named by the name of Richard Pines? And like since like years, it's been years since I ever thought about this guy. And then as soon as they said his name, like everything came back to me, and like immediately it hit me. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like yeah, I know what this is about. They're like, I told him I know exactly what the fuck this is about. He's like, oh really? Do you know? You do know it's like, what do you think it's about? Like that motherfucker molested me when I was in foster care. So they're like, well, that's exactly why we wanted to talk to you. I'm like, I'm sure it is.
Right.
So that's yeah. They found me when
And
I
you
was like when I was
and you
go
flat
ahead.
out told him. You flat out told him right there.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was the first thing that came out of my mouth. I'm like, yeah, that motherfucker molested me when I was in foster care. Yeah,
Is that the first person you'd ever told?
yeah, yeah.
First time you'd ever said it.
First time I ever came out of my mouth. Honestly, yeah. I
Wow.
mean, yeah.
So, how did they find you?
Because of so like I said, for like it was I was in foster care, and when it wasn't my foster parents, my original foster parents, they didn't send me over to this guy because they knew him. Health and welfare sent me over to him because they knew he was a foster parent. So while my foster parents were out of town, health and welfare is the one that put me. So it was probably I'm guessing that it was documented somewhere. So it's like it was documented that I was sent to his house. So somewhere along the lines they found out that, hey, could be a possible victim of his.
Wow.
So that's how they found me.
What did you think when you heard how many victims?
Dude, see, and this is where it kind of this like so after I found out, and I actually did a little bit of my own like research on it. It kind of pisses me off a little bit because like this motherfucker, they tried to charge his ass in Ada County years ago, right? For this crap.
Mm-hmm.
And like the charges that they brought up on him for me and for the other guys, this is in Idaho City. This is in Ada County. This in Ada County, there was whole other charges, but still these type of charges in Ada County, and all of a sudden all those charges that should have stuck in Ada County just disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Like they got dropped, and the detectives, like this is not the like this like the detectives, the attorney general lady, the lawyer, the three to four different people have told me this. Over 100 fucking victims. Over 100 victims.
Right.
I mean, you got to realize this guy was a freaking child psychologist. He was at St. Luke's Hospital. He was freaking at an elementary school. Dude, this guy had his own malpractice. I mean, this guy was all over the place. You cannot tell me nobody, not one freaking person out of all these victims never came forward to the Department of Health and Welfare and didn't say shit.
Right.
Nobody, right? And I don't want to go too far into it because they're actually we've been talking to several of us have been talking to a lawyer about this, but I want to say this is I talked to the lawyer lady about this, and I kind of because I was kind of mad and like it blew me away how all this got dropped in Ada County. What she told me was Ada County was they had these charges going against him, but when they went to go approach the Department of Health and Welfare about it, the Department of Health and Welfare refused to give up the records.
Mm.
So after which doesn't make any sense. Like, why wouldn't they be able to get a subpoena or something to pull those records from the Department of Health and Welfare or something like that? But that's why that's why those charges pretty much just got dropped. And the only reason these new ones got stuck was because freaking they like a detective came and found like after the Cottonwood thing they disappeared. Like nobody contacted me for like a year and a half because then Brian Koberger thing happened.
Yeah.
And then a detective came and drove to Orofino where I was incarcerated and came and contacted me. He drove up personally to talk to me. He's like, sorry. He's like, they had to put all this shit into the back burner because of the Brian Koberger thing. He told me the reason that this shit stuck this time is because they had a warrant and searched his house. They couldn't find anything, and right when they were walking out the door, he went up to his bookshelf and they freaking pulled out this book, right? And he opened it up and he found a bunch of pictures of nude kids. That's how these charges got stuck.
Oh wow.
Right. But then you you're talking to these other guys who were part of this case. These other guys, one of the guys were saying he had that was just like a little small portion. He said this one guy said there was a freaking full album, like over 100 and some odd pictures of kids
Did he ever
he
take
had.
photos of you?
Yeah, I kind of vaguely remember he did have photo. I want to say yes, but I cannot definitively say yes on that. I don't exactly remember if he did or not, but I kind of believe he did.
Mm. So were you prepared to testify against him?
Yeah, absolutely. Freaking, like after I flopped my rider and they sent me to Orofino, they transported me from Orofino back down to Idaho, back down to here to the yard down here, and then they took me to Ada County to I can't remember what it's called, to a jury trial. I can't remember what it's called. Not a grand
But
jury.
grand jury, yeah.
Yeah, grand jury trial. So they transported me down. They took me to Ada County, and when I was waiting in Ada County, this is a crazy story. Freaking. So the detective, the prosecuting attorney, and Aleshea Boals came and visited me when I was sitting in Ada County. They told me, "Hey, we're going to transport you up to Idaho City to go testify for this, to go see if this charge is going to stick."
Mhm.
And they told me, like, we got another guy who's sitting in Ada County here with you that's going to be getting transported up there with you, who's testifying with you.
Right.
I'm like, okay, cool. So they sent me back to my cell, and before they went talk to them, I was looking at this guy who was across the cell from me, and obviously you can't talk to each other, right? And this guy's looking at me, I'm looking at him, we're all making funny faces at each other, right? And then later that night, they moved me from my cell to the cell across because they had to clean that cell, and they moved me across, and I'm like, oh, right, we start bullshitting. And the guy asked me, he's like, oh, where are you going? Like, where are you in for? I'm like, oh, I'm going up north to go testify against this guy. He's like, oh, I'm going up north. Like, that's when it clicked. Like, we're going to do the same thing. Turns out that's the same guy. This guy I was in a cell with is a kid I used to hang out with. He was Richard Pines' foster kid.
Oh, you're kidding. Wow.
Yeah, same kid I used to hang out with when I was when I was at his place. And this guy, he lived with this guy. Right? And like I said, it was him and two older kids that were in high school. One of the older kids committed suicide. Right? And right? And it's the whole freaking situation was nuts. And and you could tell this guy's fucked up from this. And like, I only got this small portion of it. This guy had the full front. Like, I mean, he took the whole brunt of it. I mean, I feel bad for the guy.
Well, Shawn, what do you think it did to you?
Dude, like, it's hard to say. I mean, it makes me like hard to trust freaking the authority. Honestly, I mean, I have a hard time trusting authority. I mean, I've had a major drug addictions like my whole life. Freaking, I don't know. Like, it's hard to pinpoint what all has been what all has done to me. I mean, freaking, if it like it feels like my whole life's been an uphill battle from foster care going forward. I mean, I just like, it's hard. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint what exactly has been going on.
Mm-hmm. What did you think when you heard he had died?
That pissed me off. That even pissed me off even more because freaking this when he died and I found out the Aleshea Boals and the prosecuting attorney guy, the person that came to my house and to break the news to me, and the prosecuting guy, he was pissed. He was like, dude, like, this guy should have been sentenced like a long time ago, but the judge kept on postponing it. It just keeps on postponing it, and freaking this guy should have been sentenced a long time ago. And like I told this other, there's an interview I did before. I mean, it just goes to show, like, freaking, if you have money, if, like, for instance, you look at Diddy, obviously if you're up there and you're a celebrity, and you have money, you can't get away with very much. But if you're in the middle where you're not very known, but you have money, you can like you got a lot more you can get away with. I mean, freaking this guy got away with so fucking much for years. Like I'm 33 years old, and this shit happened. This was been happening before I was even in the picture with this guy.
Yeah.
And he freaking dude, he kept on getting repeatedly arrested, and every time he got arrested, he bonded out. He's been bonded out this whole fucking time. And every time he got bonded out, they kept on giving him back his license. He was able to keep on practicing with all these people. And then the fact that he fucking dies and all the charges get dropped because this fucker dies, where he should have been just rotting in prison and then dying, right? He could have died in prison. Fuck.
Yeah.
All like a bunch of us have been done our time. Fucking Spencer Hickey, the kid I used to hang out with in foster care, he's sitting in prison down in Twin Falls. I mean, he's fucking doing his time. We've all done our time. And what gives this fucker a right just to die and being able to fucking get away with everything and to get all of his charges dropped?
Right.
And it's like you look this all up, like yeah, people talk about it, but there's really nothing on this guy.
Shawn, a lot of times victims are afraid to come forward, or they're embarrassed, or they have shame, or for a variety of reasons, especially young men who are abused by men. What would you say to them, to somebody that might be watching or listening to the interview that is in a similar situation and hasn't come forward?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say to that is, I mean, yeah, it's embarrassing, but you could be saving somebody. Like, for instance, if I came forward, even years, because granted, I knew, like years later, I knew that what he was doing was wrong. Eventually, my mind fucking like I can guarantee it, I know it. I know years later, I fucking like, yeah, dude, what he did, I knew what he did was wrong, but yet I still didn't come forward. And if I didn't, after I realized that, I should have came forward, and I could have, you could be saving more people from getting hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, it's embarrassing, but the fact that you could be saving somebody down the road. I
Right.
mean, it sucks for you in the moment, but you could be I mean, you could be saving somebody later.
Yeah. Well, maybe you are by speaking out too, Shawn. So,
Yeah.
My thanks to Shawn for sharing his story, and my thanks to this next man who you're going to hear from. His name is Tom. He spoke with me via Zoom. He lives with his grandmother now in Utah. He was a victim of Dr. Pines, and his story just ripped my heart out, and I think it will to you. The whole purpose for him telling it, he says, is one, to tell someone. He had a victim impact statement ready to go, ready to read at Dr. Pines' trial, and now he didn't have a chance. So he's going to read it for you tonight. And also his message to other men out there who might be in similar situations. There's help. There's help, and speak up. Here's Tom. How did you first meet Richard Pines?
I was in a foster care family. I got separated from my birth parents at 4, and I believe I was maybe 5 or 6. And he was the one that would prescribe me medications for my, I guess, disabilities and all of that. And that was when I first got not reacquainted, but acquainted with him.
So you were living with a foster care family, and through the state, he was prescribed as kind of your psychiatric doctor?
Yes.
Okay, so you're 5 or 6. Would your parents go with you to the appointments?
No, my Jay and Robin lost all parental rights over me. I do remember as a kid I would have occasional visits with Robin, but then those were taken away by the state for actions that she would be doing. So it was pretty much just foster care family after foster care home.
So you were kind of bouncing around foster homes.
Yes.
And in each of these foster homes, they would be responsible for taking you to see Dr. Pines.
Yes.
I see. How often would you see him?
It all depended. If I remember correctly, at first it was like once every month, and then it would get to a couple times each month. Um, he would re-up my meds and then put me on more medications. It was never those types of taking me down dosages. It was always just giving me more and more meds.
And were you going to like an office to see him, or was it to his house?
It was an office, whatever office he had worked at. I'm pretty sure it was the office that he would, um, when he lost his license the first time. But it was like a doctor's office and all of that.
So when did he start abusing you?
Um, I was 6 years old. I remember that we had gone in there for a med checkup, and he had mentioned that he had a cabin up in the woods that it was a once in a lifetime deal that he would take his clients up to and hang out with them and all of that. And I was about 6 years old when that happened.
So you said you wanted to go. Obviously, I think any little boy would want to go up to the cabin and hang out in the woods. Was this just with you, or was it with your foster family, or with other little kids?
Um, the foster mom at the time was there in the office when he had mentioned it and was completely on board with it. I was the only one in the family that went, but when I did go up there, I do remember that there was another kid there. I don't know if it was his kid or someone else, but there was another child there.
And I would imagine that this is a respected doctor who's a father who has kids of his own. And this was what, 30 years ago?
About
25, 30. So back then, even now, I think some people might think, well, he's a doctor. He works with kids. He's not going to do anything. Um, do you remember? And again, you don't have to say anything that you don't feel comfortable sharing. But do you remember what he did to you that first time in the cabin?
um I do. I mean, I remember bits and pieces. At that time, I was suffering, which I still do. It just gotten worse with age. I suffered from sleep insomnia, so I couldn't really sleep. And at that time, I was also naturally still a night owl. I remembered that to get me to sleep, he gave me a medication which completely knocked me out. I don't know what med it was. But as I was laying down, I would lay on my left side, and he laid right behind me. And as I was starting to nod out, he would grope me in the front area, and then um, I had passed out. But when I woke up, my rear end hurt really badly. After that, I could barely sit for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. I struggled to walk, and that lasted for about a month and a half. I didn't know really what had happened. I was 6 years old, um, but I would say, I can't get up. I could barely walk, and the foster family that I was with at the time really didn't care. I was just a paycheck to them, and they just blew it off as you're just having issues with something else and all of that. So
You did tell them though. You did say something's wrong. I'm in pain.
yeah, and it was very visible too. Like I could barely walk. I had a limp. This at school when I would go to school, I couldn't sit down. I had to stand up, which got me sent to the principal's office a lot. And I'd said, I'm in pain, but no one, in my point of view, really gave a crap about. Well, to me, it was just, oh, he's just acting. He's just faking. Nothing's wrong with him. And I know as a kid, I was a very troubled child. I had a lot of anger issues. So, to me, their point of view was this is just him acting out, nothing to worry about, nothing to cause alarm to. This is just him being a troubled kid.
Yeah.
So,
I'm so sorry that that's hard, especially because at that age you You probably don't know. You probably don't know. You just know that you're in pain and that you don't want to hurt.
Yeah,
So, did the abuse continue? I mean, did you go and continue to see the doctor?
I did. I did. I continued to see him until I really don't know what age. I think I was maybe 11, 12, because I know that there was a family that I was sent to in Michigan, specifically Detroit, Michigan. And after that was when I didn't see him anymore. It wasn't really until I was part of Casey Family Programs with a worker by the name of Jason Almarico that um, I was brought to light of who this guy was and what he did. Um,
I want you to tell me about that, Tom. Let me before that though. Let me ask you. So you saw him for about 5 years, and every time you'd go see him, were you abused, or were there times where it was just a normal appointment? I mean, did it continue, and did you ever tell anybody else, or was it kind of to the point that no one was listening and he just did what he did?
After the whole cabin thing, it was pretty much going to the office again and still seeing him. Um, at that time, like after the whole incident, I kind of had this feeling that something did happen. He did do something to me. So like I kind of had walls up. There were times that I would literally tell the foster parents I was with that I don't want to go, get me a new doctor, not really knowing still what had happened. Um, but it was after that, it was the office. Never went back up to his cabin. He never offered to take me up to his cabin again after that night. Um, and what was the other part of the question?
So you don't recall the abuse ever happening in his office. It was only that once at the cabin.
Yeah.
And did you ever tell anyone specifically like what happened at the cabin?
No, pretty much after the parents I was with at the time and everyone told me just to, shut up, get over it. I pretty much kept it to myself as if, okay, no one's going to believe me. No one really cares. So I just pretty much kept it to myself. And
Gosh. So you said you moved to, did you say Minnesota?
Michigan,
Michigan.
Detroit, Michigan.
Michigan. And you were in some sort of program, and that's when you learned about Dr. Pines?
After Detroit, Michigan, I had come back here. Well, I mean, I've been through almost 260 homes, but I was,
260 foster homes
yeah,
in your childhood between 0 and 18?
yeah.
Oh my.
Um, it was pretty much, I think I was like maybe 16. I was living with who I consider my mom now, Rachel Clark, when I was in that program. And me and Jason Almarico were driving down the highway, and I was just talking about my past, what I've been through. And I had mentioned Richard Pines, and he had looked at me with a very serious look, like, well, did anything happen with you and him? And I kind of pretty much shut down. And Jason Almarico was one of those workers that he knew that if I was given a choice, pretty much like he pulled the car over and said, "We ain't going anywhere. This is a very serious topic. We need to talk about. This man has done very horrible things to other kids, and I need to know if you were one of them." And pretty much told me, we're not going anywhere until we talk about this. And that is when I opened up that, yes, things did happen. This is how it happened. This is what had happened. And I guess at this time he had already been arrested, already lost his license, but never was charged for what he did. And I'm pretty sure that was what the case was, because just the energy that he was giving off was, here's another victim that went under the radar and wasn't heard, wasn't listened to. And that's when I had opened up about Pines.
And how old were you?
I believe I was about 16 and a half.
Okay, so about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And to explain this man who pulled over and said we need to talk about this. He's done some serious things. Was he like a caseworker
Yes, he was a caseworker. He, at the time, worked at Casey Family Programs.
in
Um, I,
Idaho?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once you told him this, what happened?
Really nothing came about it. I told him my story. He uh, was the same as everyone, like, you shouldn't have to go through that and all that, but nothing really transpired from it. It wasn't until I was in Nevada a couple of years ago that Aleshea had sent two people to the door to pretty much reopen the case and talk to all of us about everything that had happened. Like, I wasn't even aware that he was arrested the first time. I wasn't aware that he had lost his license, and I wasn't aware that he was still out and about.
So
Um,
so you get a knock at the door kind of out of the blue with two people from the Attorney General's office saying, "We're here to talk to you about Richard Pines."
I was actually in my trailer. I lived on my mom's property in a trailer, and they had knocked on the door asking for me, and mom was the one who came to my door saying, "There's two people that are here to talk to you. They're from Idaho. They work in the law." And my first thing was, I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
I've been here all day, um, and we had gone into the uh, front area where the fireplace was for burning outside at night, and that is where we had sat down and they had said, "Well, we're from the attorney's office. We're reopening the case of Richard Pines. We have knowledge that you were also one of the victims," and that is where everything started to unfold currently with this current case. And that's when they told me about, well, yeah, he was arrested the first time. He was lost his license to work with kids and never was charged. And now he has his license back working with kids again. So we're just trying to get, all the evidence we can to pretty much take this guy off the street.
Do you remember what year that was?
I was 22, 23 at the time. I'm 30 now.
So about
Um,
7 years ago.
yeah.
Okay. And then they go on to arrest him eventually, and he's locked up and they're preparing for trial. Were you planning to testify at his trial?
I very much was. And now, like, even now with how Mother Nature took its course, I feel cheated. Like, with I have so much anger, and knowing the fact that Mother Nature took him out before he could really truly face justice, I feel extremely cheated because this never should have happened. He should have been put away behind bars the first time, never released. Like, it never should have been reopened. And I was very much wanting to testify against him. I wanted to face this man in person and say my piece. And I wasn't able to.
I before I was speaking with you, I was speaking with another victim who said the same thing, that he was angry. He was upset. He had this victim had actually served time in jail, in prison, and said, I served my time. Why didn't he have to serve his?
Yeah.
So what did you think when you learned he had died? Do you remember that day?
I was angry. Um, my first thought was, because I had told Aleshea, given her a warning, like, yeah, I'll testify, but you got to make sure that there are about 15 to 18 cops surrounding me and him, because there's no guarantee I won't jump over that counter and rip his throat out. He's caused me more pain to me, and like, I've been through so much abuse, but the pain he's caused me has infected my entire life. I mean, the abuse has, but he has affected, like, I won't go to a doctor. I could be dying in my own room and I still won't go to a doctor. I tell people, if you're taking me to a doctor, you have to knock me out. Make sure I am out cold the whole entire drive, the whole entire waiting room process. Because if I wake up, I get violent. I don't trust doctors, and it's something that I will never trust a doctor again. I told Aleshea, just put me in the room for 5 minutes with him. Let me do what I want to do with him, and that'll be that. But the law says I can't do that, and I was angry.
Yeah.
There's, to me, when you do that, you are no longer human. You are no longer, in my eyes, someone that deserves to breathe air. You are worse than a monster. And to hear that he had died, because the whole thing, when we were doing it, like, there was evidence enough to put this man away. And the defense people were prolonging it, like, you need more evidence, but yet there were scrapbooks of children's pictures in these scrapbooks. There was, more evidence other than that, and yet we need more evidence to go through with this. And that's also what really infuriated me, was the simple, saying, well, we need more evidence. Like, you've got all the evidence we need, and yet nothing transpired with it. It was pretty much, to me, like a cat and mouse game, holding it off, and that's also what it sent me over the edge. I have dissociative identity disorder, and when things like that happen, it triggers my most violent personality, and it was getting more and more difficult to keep myself mentally stable, keep myself from doing stupid things. And it got to the point that it was either I figure out some way to help myself, or I'm going to go off the edge. And it was very close to me just going off the edge and taking the law into my own hands.
So what did you do to help yourself so that you didn't do that?
My mom is a very, very big contributor to that. She's the only one that, when I really need to talk to someone, when I really need just to be able to scream at the top of my lungs, say whatever comes in my mind, that she's the one that's there. She's the one that she'll step back, she'll listen, she won't butt in, or not butt in, but she won't say anything, she'll just let me rant. And she was the one that, during the whole process, told me, if you ever need to let loose, instead of going out and getting violent, come in the house, pull me aside, and just go off. And she was a big reason why I didn't go out and get myself in trouble. She's the only foster parent, which is why I consider my mom, that really showed she cared. Her first words to me was, "You're stuck with me. I'm not going anywhere. You're not getting rid of me. You're stuck with me." And even when I left her home as a foster child, she was still there. She always kept tabs on me. She always wanted to talk. If it wasn't for Rachel, I definitely wouldn't be here.
Thank goodness for her. Thank goodness for you, and finding her and being able to have the courage to stand up to him in court, had that day come, which, it should have. I wish it would have, for your sake. What would you have said to him?
I actually have a whole notepad of Aleshea told me to write down like a
victim impact statement.
Yeah, and I actually have in the notepad of what I would have said to him. If I push like the middle button, would it hang up the call so I could pull up the notepad, or?
Oh, try it. If it does, we'll get back on it. I think you can exit out.
So the Pine statement that I had wrote was, my name is, and I used my full name. My name is Tommy Croft, and I am one of the many victims of Richard Pines. Because of his actions and the horrendous things he did to me, it has affected every aspect of my life. Because of him, I don't trust any sort of doctor in the medical field or anyone in the medical field for that matter. It has also caused me not to have faith and trust in law enforcement because of him. Amongst other things I went through in life, I have developed dissociative identity disorder, which in itself is a nightmare. It has affected my relationships and being able to keep them, whether they be family or friends. It has affected my ability to trust in people to help me when I need it most. It has caused me to think and feel that asking for help is a weakness and is something that will always affect me. Even with time and trying to work on it, I will never be able to have the life I deserve because of the deep-seated emotional and physical trauma I endured.
What did this do to you? How did this affect your life?
It affected everything. And like I was saying, I don't trust people. I when I need help the most, I don't ask for it because of that particular moment. Even at 6, I knew something was wrong, and I was crying out for help, and everyone just blew me off. It's affecting being able to keep relationships, being able to talk about my feelings. Has affected my all in all aspects of my view in the world, particularly with law enforcement and with the court systems. Like with me, there is no good cop. I understand there are cops that do their job, that do care, but to me, you still got a badge. You wear that badge, you're a cop. I don't care for you. To me, you're just as bad as Pines. And especially with the like judges and all of that, like with me, like even when people do come forward and do talk about this type of thing, there's still no change. Like and it is affected with the view. Like with me, if you were like Pines and have hurt kids like this, you don't even deserve to be behind a cell. To me, it should be immediate death penalty, and in the worst way possible. It has affected the whole aspect of everything.
Yeah. What would you say, Tom, to kids or even teenagers or even young adults that have been sexually abused and have been ashamed or embarrassed or afraid or have put it out of their mind? It does take courage for you to come forth publicly and speak, and I can't thank you enough for that. Especially as a man, a lot of times there's a stigma with men and
Yeah.
sexual abuse. There's something about it, especially if the perpetrator is a man. What would you say to other people in looking for hope, looking for help, looking for something because they're not quite there yet. They're not quite ready to talk.
I, I personally, I would say come forward. Like I get it; it's not comfortable. I get that the whole stigmatism with the men that do suffer through it, because that's very accurate. They think that men can't go through that. Come forward. I mean, with me keeping this in for so long, even as I grew older, I started to realize, okay, this is what he did, and I kept it in. It's not something that is going to help you, mentally and all that. But at the same time, I think if I would have come forward a lot sooner, the even with the damage that had already been done, it would have helped a lot more. It it's still not going to help heal, but it could also with oneself help them to be able to not stand for something like that. And I'm just as guilty in that area. Not coming forward is almost as if saying, well, nothing happened, it's okay, which then gives the perpetrator more of a cause to do what what they're doing to other people and not stopping it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, good advice there. Have you been able to go see a therapist about this, Tom?
I I did set up for I actually have on the 20th a meeting with a therapy office. My big thing with therapy was I've been through two counselors a lot, and every time I've gone into these counselors, I've literally been told that get out of my office, you're beyond our help, we cannot help you. Which also caused a lot of distrust in counselors, because to me, going to counseling is supposed to be a safe place where you can be completely honest.
Yeah.
And given the fact that I have come to terms and come to understand my dissociative identity, I had asked Aleshea and all them for places that specialize in handling people with dissociative identity. So I have an appointment on the 20th to go to a place, counseling place, to pretty much determine which counselor would be the best for me. So I am trying to get into counseling.
Well, I hope that this time is different, and I hope that you're able to get that help. And I just, my heart goes out to you, Tom, for everything you've been through and for the betrayal that you've experienced and the heartache and the suffering. And I hope that you're able to get to a better place. I know all of our viewers would feel the same way, and just send, all their support and thoughts and their prayers and all that from all over. I can't thank Tom enough for sharing his story, along with everybody else who was here tonight, Tom and Shawn and Aleshea Boals and Alex Sosa from the Boise Prosecuting Attorney's Office. We have at 8 o'clock tonight, well, right now, by now, it's on eastidahonews.com, a written story of everything that it's kind of more concise if you wanted to share it with people that might benefit from this, or you can share this episode of Courtroom Insider. It's there, and you can go check it out, and I would encourage you to share it. And my thanks to victims who are willing to come forward, not only go on the stand and talk, but come here publicly and share their stories, because it can be hard, but so many times it can be helpful. I believe it can be helpful. Newspapers.com. Big thanks to them, our sponsor of Courtroom Insider. I typed in Richard Pines' name. Here's the story from 2017 when State Board reinstates doctor accused of sexual misconduct. Idaho State Board of Medicine has reinstated the license of a Boise psychiatrist who's been found by the state Supreme Court to have had improper sexual contact with former patients. This is from the AP sourcing the Idaho Statesman. There's all sorts of stuff that you can look up about this doctor going back. Well, I say all sorts of stuff, not all of it, but there's a lot of stuff from the Statesman. Looks like back in 98, he was listed here working at St. Alphonsus. And then it looks like in 1998, there was a back to school workshop where Richard Pines spoke in Boise, 1998. If only we could have told the people then what we know now. Newspapers.com, they have all sorts of vital, important, interesting information. Go check them out if you haven't already. Here's where you can find me. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, X, and on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't. Thanks to all of you who are joining us for the first time tonight, or who have joined my Facebook page lately, or are following us. Really appreciate it. I appreciate you all for watching eastidahonews.com and our Courtroom Insider tonight. We will be back tomorrow with another Courtroom Insider. Still debating between a couple of stories that we'll cover. Of course, if there's anything breaking in the Nancy Guthrie case, we will bring that to you tomorrow night. Otherwise, we'll have some other interesting topics to discuss. Thank you all for watching tonight. Have a good one. We'll see you later.